2017 has been a surprisingly excellent year for the Vita, with games like Undertale, Ys 8 and SteamWorld Dig 2 being not just Game of the Year material, but being some of the best games on the system. But what about the games that didn't make a big splash? Here's 4 games that I loved that didn't seem to get much attention at all despite deserving it. First, and in my opinion the best game on this list, is Claddin Returns This Is Sengoku. I didn't know much about Claddin Returns when I started playing it. I had seen a trailer and liked the historical Japanese setting, pixel graphics and 8-bit soundtrack. But beyond that, I didn't really know what type of game it was, so I was pleasantly surprised at how much I loved this game. The game is a top-down action RPG dungeon explorer. It reminded me of the first Legend of Zelda on the NES, but with fluid movement and action. You can run and jump and you've got a wide variety of weapons to use with their own strengths and weaknesses. The gameplay was the best element. It's so much fun to run around attacking enemies, although as you progress in the game it gets much harder. The game challenges you to think more strategically and plan your approach rather than just barreling in. The difficulty really ramps up later in the game. To assist you, there's so many customization options, not just for your equipment, but also through acquiring vassals and adding them to your party to boost your stats. There is so much to do in this game. Aside from the 10 stages, each with 5 levels and side quests, you unlock bonus, more difficult stages, and there's also a procedurally generated 99-floor dungeon. Overall, Claddin was an excellent game. It's fun and challenging, and the 8-bit style music was really good too. There's a demo on PSN, so give it a try. Rabi-Ribi. When I first saw screens for Rabi-Ribi, I assumed this was not going to be a game for me. The cute and colourful graphics made me think this was some kind of kids game. It surprised me then how deep and interesting the game turned out to be. Rabi-Ribi is a 2D action platformer where you unlock new abilities that open up new areas on a world map, so basically a Metroidvania. You start the game very weak with just a hammer for melee attacks, and movement feels pretty stiff. As you discover new abilities and unlock upgrades, Irina, the main character, becomes a powerful fighter. When I first started playing, I didn't enjoy the stiffness of the movement and the attacks. The game became so much more fun as I discovered the new abilities and upgraded my hammer. New abilities were necessary not just for unlocking new areas, but also to handle the difficulty of the game. I found the first 3 chapters of the game very easy. The difficulty significantly ramped up from chapter 4 onwards. I was dying quite frequently on boss battles, but the game was so fun that dying just made me want to try harder and beat the boss. The publisher P-Cube has called the game a bouncy bullet hell platformer, and the bullet hell aspect comes from the boss fights. Bosses attack you with a variety of lasers, bullets and missiles flying all over the screen. I found it pretty much impossible to avoid all bullets and took damage often. Boss fights were very much about minimizing damage and knowing when to let yourself get hit so that you have a few seconds of invulnerability to avoid a bigger attack. The boss fights were challenging but also a lot of fun. Touhou Genso Wanderer. Touhou Genso Wanderer falls under the category of mystery dungeon games. These are turn-based roguelike games where the player explores randomly generated levels, fighting monsters to reach the final area. In the case of Touhou Genso Wanderer, to reach the top of the tower. As you kill enemies, you gain experience to level up as a character, and also your current equipment levels up. As well as managing health, you need to keep an eye on your tummy gauge, basically your hunger meter. The longer you play, the hungrier your character becomes, and unless you eat food, you die. When you do die, and you will, a lot, you restart back at the first floor with 0 experience. If you've played Shiren the Wanderer, and you should because it's excellent, then you'll feel right at home with Touhou Genso Wanderer. I personally loved Shiren the Wanderer, and had sunk tens of hours into the game, so I had mixed feelings about playing a game that was identical in so many ways. Shiren is a better game overall, but Touhou Genso Wanderer made some tweaks to make the experience easier overall and far more friendly for new players to jump into. Although the final boss of the story was a huge spike in difficulty compared to the game. Once you complete the main quest, then you unlock 3 new dungeons with increasing difficulty. I played for around 25 hours and that's without finishing the hard and very hard dungeons. Touhou Genso Wanderer has a lot of mechanics to learn, but once you master them, it feels really satisfying getting through a floor of the dungeon unscathed. If you're looking for a game that'll keep you busy for dozens of hours, then this is a good choice. My final pick is Xenoraid. The scrolling and shooting aspect of the game is similar to other 2D shooters. You control a fighter ship as it travels through space and take on hordes of enemy ships and the occasional boss ship. What sets Xenoraid apart from other games in the genre is that you control 4 ships on each mission, with different primary and secondary weapons. The types of ships can vary based on the power of their weapons and their maneuverability. Having 4 ships to freely swap between is almost like having 4 lives. This may seem generous, but the game compensates for this by being very difficult. Firstly, the standard health of each ship is low. It's very easy for a wave of enemies to destroy you if you aren't careful about how you dodge incoming bullets. Also, the enemy movements seem very smart to me. I found a lot of times I was taking damage because the enemy ships preempted where I was going to be. Many 2D shooters I've played had enemies that moved in a standard pattern that you could learn as you replayed levels, but Xenoraid's enemy movements was more random and difficult to predict. As a result, I found myself taking a lot of damage even in the early levels. Overall, I found Xenoraid to be fun, challenging, good for short bursts when you're playing the main missions, or for longer runs when you've got more time, you can play the survival mode. If you like 2D shooters, then this is an easy game to recommend. So guys, what hidden Vita gems would you recommend? Leave a comment below, and as always, thanks for watching.